really good. How are you?
I'm good. Like I haven't already spoken to you today. How's your weekend been?
Really good. I am looking forward to this little live. We've been having to plan it and rearrange and what have you, but we are here at last.
I know, and I'm really hoping now that we can make this like a now we've got them. We can make it more of a regular thing on the two-way chat.
Well,
and I've got a live in your group tomorrow as well.
Yeah, well, now we've got someone who knows what on earth they're doing with the technical side. Because as everyone knows, me and you are both pretty useless when it comes to that kind of thing. But hey, we can't be good at everything. That's all I'm going to say.
Well, that's it. I'm pretty good at most things. Okay. Right, so ears. And then you and I haven't really discussed what we were going to chat about, have we? And you know me, I'm normally one of those people that makes loads of notes and then I end up just like talking to the screen for ages. But I guess what's really nice in this is obviously I see a lot of ear stuff in consultation. Sometimes it's purely to do with ear stuff, but sometimes it's more in conjunction with other things and it's more symptomatic than anything, or it might be more superficial. But I thought it'd be good to get your perspective, seeing as you've got a really big group and you're seeing that a lot. I know when I said to you, what do you think we should chat about? You were like, ears, 100% ears.
We see it an awful lot.
What kind of percentage do you reckon?
Goodness. Well, we get a lot of quite itchy, poorly dogs sent to us in my. So I would say probably good 40%, 50%, an awful lot. Every single day we have at least 1, 2, 3 posts about itchy dogs, and always the ears are always, itchy paws, itchy ears. And it can be really, really distressing for the dog as well. Because they're not just itchy, they can be painful and smelly and wet, and it's just not nice at all.
Yeah. Are you seeing it a lot in conjunction with allergies and food intolerances more than anything, do you think?
Yeah, I think, yeah. I mean, sometimes they will just have just itchies and nothing else. But it's generally, the paws and the ears and there's generally something else going on in the background. But then there has to be a reason for the ears to be either infected or itchy. It's not just people kind of will say, the dog's ears are itchy, what shall we do? And it's not quite as straightforward as that, because we need to figure out why are the ears itchy, because it's no amount of, obviously putting some drops in and doing this, that and the other can help soothe the ears, but what we really need to know is why are those ears itchy, and get to the root cause and start addressing it. And obviously, as we talk about quite a lot, gut health is absolutely massive, and especially when it comes to ears, well, in pretty much everything, but obviously we know gut health is correlated to the health of the skin and the ears as well, isn't it? So
yeah. What's really interesting, because I take a lot of stuff from research on the human side, because there's so little, and there are bits from the canine side which you can sort of pull in and relate to, but on the human side, obviously there's a huge amount of research, a lot we don't know, but a huge amount of research around the microbiome, certain phyla and then probiotics that are linked to other organ systems. So again, this thing where I always go, everything oscillates around the gut. And you've got all these axes. So you've got the gut-brain axes, and we know that, a lot of people now are starting to hear that gut health is very much correlated to mental health, how one's feeling, the general central nervous system, blah, blah, blah. But there's a lot more than that going on. So you have gut lung, you have gut liver, gut kidney. And what they found is within these axes, the certain probiotics, which are well known to support these certain organ systems, they produce metabolites that correspond and help with the health of that organ. And so some of the research that I was looking into, especially on the ear side of things, because we've said we were going to chat about ears, is that there was this thing run, and there was one with canines as well. It's this thing run where they actually did a swabbing. It was for bacterial infections, and obviously, you know, well, we can talk about bacterial and yeast, the differences, blah, blah, blah. But they were doing bacterial infections. I think there were 15 dogs involved, and they found that there was certain bacteria that was residing in the ears that should only be found in the gut, which I found, really interesting.
With all the gut stuff and the microbiota and probiotics and stuff, we really are just scratching the tip of the iceberg.
There's no idea.
There's so much that we just haven't got a clue. And that's the thing with, you know, the itchy ears and the allergies, and, you know, people think it's, you know, you're just going to swap to raw food, give some probiotics and it's going to be fixed. And it's such a complex issue and such a long road and a hard process of backwards and forwards and ups and downs, and 2 steps forward and 1 step back, and 3 forward and 2 back. And I mean, you know, I've been there with Betty for 10 years on this road, and we're still on this road. You know, people think that the dog's going to be fixed, and that's not always the case. You're just looking to get your dog to a point where it's, you know, you're trucking along and you're doing okay. I know when Betty, anybody who knows mine and Betty's story, she's just been an absolute, I'm going to say teacher. I was going to say nightmare, but we'll rephrase that to teacher. And she's been doing extremely good for such a long time, but then I got a bit complacent and a little bit clever, and I was like, I'm going to give her some tripe. She really likes tripe. Now, of course, we know that tripe's high in histamine. It is contains grass residue. So of course I gave Betty the tripe, and then her ears were like red raw. They were all had like this grey crap in them, all itchy, and that took about 3 months for that to resolve. It took forever.
And I know what you mean. It is that kind of complacency, but equally, you also want to be able to try new things and introduce new things. And the thing is, when we're talking about gut health, when that isn't working very well, you're not just looking at poking and making certain allergies worse, you're looking at food intolerances, and that always arises when the gut isn't working effectively and the gut microbiome isn't as it should be. Yeah. So, you know, you've got, it's multi-layered, isn't it? But I always say to people, the first thing you do need to do is look at the superficial side of things. You know, there are certainly going to be dogs that are going to be more prone to it anyway. You know, dogs with really big, thick, lush, floppy ears, they're always going to be a moister kind of warmer environment for bacteria and so on to flourish. Yeah. So sometimes those dogs actually don't need a fat lot to trigger them. In fact, if anything, you have to adopt really good ear health as a maintenance always with dogs like that. So yes, there is some superficial stuff, but predominantly I think, yes, it's definitely correlated to gut, but then what affects the gut? And that's what I always think is really good with yours, is that you always go, what are you feeding? What vaccinations are you giving, and what toxins are you giving? Because those 3 are just the fundamentals, and then in and around that we can work out all the other stuff. And
yeah, because we need to figure out all those things. You know, if a dog is having a dry food and it's one of the ones that is sort of 70% carbohydrates, then that's going to make the dog very yeasty. So generally you'll find that the ears will be super yeasty and itchy. Then they'll be getting, you know, the owners will be thinking, oh, we'll give it, you know, carrot sticks for its treat, which again, lovely for it to chomp on a nice bit of fresh carrot, but again, really high carb. Then it might be getting a dentist stick or, you know, that kind of treat. So we've got to look at all of these things. Then it's getting wormed every month, which is damaging the gut bacteria, and then it's like, you know, shows itchy feet, itchy ears. So then if you change the food, change all these things, add some, you know, some gut healing in, nine times out of 10, those ears will resolve.
Yeah.
But then you've got all your other things like your environmental issues, like your dust mites and your molds and all that, and that's much harder to deal with because you can't just take that away.
You can't, but I always say, you know, as if you are, and I've said to you before with my insane allergies that I deal with, if I'm not being really well behaved with diet, with not drinking alcohol, with reducing caffeine, and having the supplementation that I normally have, if I'm not supporting myself, then I know that my environmental allergies are going to be far more heightened. Yeah. So you can definitely support that. And I think it's interesting, actually. I think this gentleman was from your group, and I spoke to him last Wednesday, and he said, you know, I've been doing all these things, and I've changed all the foods, and we've gone through all these foods, and now we're on a hydrolyzed diet, and I feel like I've tried everything. And I said to him, but we're looking at this like the food is the culprit or the savior, and actually what we're doing is we're not looking at reducing that inflammation, we're not looking at healing all of that, the gut and so on, but also you're not really, I think what happens is when there's an ear infection, quite often they're going to have drops, there's going to be antibiotics, there might be some steroids, and I always say even the ear canal has its own microbiota. So
wiping out, aren't you?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and this is where I love Joe's product, but I always say, look, if you're just giving Joe's product, which is a probiotic, there's lots of different in the range, the Ingenious products, the Lucas sprays. With the ear, I feel you've got to have a really good anti-inflammatory. You need to have a really good antimicrobial, antifungal ear cleaner or drop to go in there, and then also doing that probiotic. You know, it's got to be, I feel like it has to be an approach just for the ear itself, and then we're going to deal with all the other stuff as well. And I just felt, I could really see where this guy had literally done and tried pretty much everything in his mind, and was just so totally confused, and just went, I don't see what you're going to do. And I went, there is so much to do here. So let's just do a few superficial things first, then we're going to do this, and then we're going to get the diet just right. And in some cases the diet, like you say, has got absolutely nothing to do with it.
It's really, really difficult, because a lot of people that are maybe feeding a ultra processed food, you know, they look to raw or to fresh food like it's the cure-all.
Yeah.
And up to a fresh food, and all of the dog's illnesses are just going to disappear. And unfortunately, that isn't the case. Obviously, you know, even if your dog's got allergies or ear problems, and you swap to raw, swap to a fresh food, and those problems don't disappear, you know, what you've got to remember is you're still feeding that diet for the overall health of the dog. And even if it doesn't make that issue disappear as such, it will still be much better for the body to be on a fresh diet whilst dealing with those issues. But it's not. People just think it's a cure-all, and oh, I tried raw and it didn't fix my dog. It's a load of rubbish. And you're like,
I went back to dry. Yeah, right. That's like having a really awful diet and saying, you know, I didn't lose the weight that I wanted to, so I've just gone back to that food again. Yeah, but we're still talking about your health here.
Yeah.
And you know, longevity, just generally how you're feeling and what you're feeding your body. You know, we need to nourish the body.
Yeah. And there's all the other fundamental groundwork that you need to do on top of that as well, which is a step that is generally missed out, or they'll want to change the food before doing any gut work. And sometimes I think the gut work is so important for that foundation, because often then if you swap foods, sometimes the issue gets worse because you haven't actually done any of the groundwork that you need before you just start doing all this other stuff.
I sometimes don't even change anything with the food when someone immediately comes to me. If they're really bad, unless I've got a real inkling it's food related.
We didn't with Betty, did we?
No.
Tried to get some gut work in, and even that was an absolute nightmare.
Yeah, but slowly but surely, you know, we slowly shifted across. And I think that's the thing, when the gut integrity is that compromised, even the most beautiful of ingredients that are meant to be healing and really quite inert, they shouldn't be producing much of a reaction, do really cause a reaction. And that's when, you know, sometimes you have to look that bit further and maybe start working with the owner, or, you know.
Can you remember when I went and bought her all that beautiful organic beef and organic heart, and it made her really ill? And I'd just spend like twice as much on your food for a week than I would spend on my own shopping, and she was like throwing it up, and I was like, that's organic beef that you've just vomited all over my carpet.
And we had a really nice recipe too, which we couldn't really use. But you know, I was saying to someone today, it does take a long time. So the superficial side of things. So I know you recommend Joe's product. Yeah. Obviously, if anyone's been using, just so we can give a few handy little bits. In the chat. On the superficial side, so just literally looking at what's going on for the ear, what are the products that you recommend? I think they're the same as the ones that I recommend.
But definitely Joe's product. The only thing you have to be careful is if you're using that, if you use anything else alongside it, it could stop that working.
Yeah.
So I would probably just use that and see how that goes. I suppose you could clean the ears with, I don't know, warm water, or probably maybe, would you use any cooled teas or anything to clean the ears? Or
no, not really. I think if anything, I would be inclined to use a little Mullein oil or
olive oil,
colloidal silver. To be honest, I think what I would probably take the same approach as I would when somebody's maybe taking we're giving a dog antimicrobial herbs, for example. You know, whether it's oregano oil, pau d'arco, whatever it might be that's really good for bacteria around fungus. We want to use that, and I know it's going to be wiping out some good bacteria as well as the bad bacteria. However, I do sometimes feel that's leaving the canal a little open if you just leave it. It's like saying don't give probiotics when you're giving antibiotics. Yeah. I don't believe that approach is right. I just think that you need to give it away from at least 2 hours away. And it's kind of a way to sort of replenish or get rid of the inflammation and the infection, and then replenish with the good bacteria again, and then that can get to work maybe overnight, and then you'd be doing sort of the antimicrobials, like the cleaning, and maybe like an anti-inflammatory. I mean, I'm not against pharmaceuticals at all, and the Zymox is one that you can buy online anyway, but I quite like the Zymox 1% hydrocortisone, which if you're really desperate,
because it is the only thing that works for a lot of dogs. And if the dogs are, you know, in agony with the ear, well, you have to treat it.
And 7 days, you know, I will push it to 10, but 7 days can work wonders. And then that's when you maybe continue on with some of the nice sort of drops and the Luke.
Got the inflammation and the infection under control a little bit, then you can start using other things, can't you?
Exactly.
So what would you recommend internally then?
Well, the one thing you don't want to do is use anything fermented at that time, because you don't want to spark any more histamine release. I think sometimes what's quite interesting is to see are both ears affected, or is it one or the other? So normally when it's right, this is how we would look at it on the human side of things from a naturopathic approach. When we're looking at the right hand is potentially more correlated to the liver. And so that is probably more related to histamine, where if it's left, it's probably more in conjunction with digestion.
Interesting.
Now, it doesn't mean maybe both will be affected. It could be environmental, it could be allergies and poor microbiota of the gut and the ear canal. It could be, you know, a number of different things. But I always find that quite interesting. And if you tend to follow that stance, like if there's the right ear, I'm definitely putting some liver support in. Obviously if it's yeast, then I would definitely potentially put a little bit of biocidin, or which is a GSE, or an oregano oil, very small amount, and just to cope with that dye I would maybe give a little milk thistle. Obviously this is very generalized. You need to know that a dog's actually okay with those herbs.
I do love the biocidin. I love it for lots of different things. I mean, you know, it can treat worms. It's good for water infections. You know, it's just good. It's a great all-round thing for lots of different things. I think it's something that I would always have in the cupboard.
I've got it in the cupboard.
I've always got it in. That things like that, and marshmallow root always, and probiotics always have those things in, because you never know when you're going to need them, really.
Yeah. So dependent on whether it was, I mean, look, the chances are you go through all the questions with regards to digestion. First off, have they got low stomach acid? Because you know that there's going to be poor digestion, protein digestion is going to be poor, and therefore, you know, they're not digesting meats well, and there are going to be food intolerances, no doubt. So you want to make sure that that's all working properly. So sometimes if I think it's really bad, and you might see that your dog has signs of low HCl by burping, gas, constipation, diarrhea. Normally, you know, food intolerances, those things normally come in conjunction with low stomach acid. That's where it really starts.
Yeah.
And that's what we'll be talking about tomorrow.
Yeah.
I would be looking at gut healing herbs like deglycerized licorice. I tend to avoid slippery elm with ear issues mostly. I have been using my product sample with a couple who've got ear problems, and that's worked well, so that has been okay. But yeah, deglycerized licorice, marshmallow root, most definitely. And if I think that there's some food intolerances and they haven't got acid reflux, then L-glutamine, a vegan source, is really, really good.
Good to try.
Yeah, and then you know me, I'm soil bacteria the whole way, because there's so little we actually know and understand about the dog's gut microbiome. I mean, yes, we can go and have the phyla tested and see what's going on with the dog's gut, and we have a rough idea of what we might want to introduce in to help increase and help that flourish. But actually, there's very little information that we do actually have. So I tend to find a broad spectrum is not harmful for 3 to 6 months, and then you can reassess and see. So the key body biotics I often or protect. I mean, look, it also dependent on what else might be going on. If sometimes there might be other recurrent infections, which is really common with dysbiosis in the gut. There might be some urinary tract infections. So you'd definitely be using Lactobacilli bifidobacterium, and you see a real difference. So it can be a little bit case by case, most definitely. It's not like it's just standard.
You have to assess each one, don't you? And I think also as well, I like to ask when you're seeing these, you know, things pop up, if there's any stress as well.
I've got stress written down here. Diet, gut health, food intolerances, which are chitonin, stress, toxins, and heavy metals. I always are, and it's surprising how often they'll be like, no stress, and then they're like, oh, actually, you know, whatever's just happened, and then it's like, it's like the aha moment, and they're like, oh wow, now I get it. Because that stress, adrenal axis, that's always impacted. You know, as soon as the dog goes into that fight or flight, cortisol raises, they've done pentacotropin into the gut, and the gut wants to shut down, and that stops the gut from working effectively. And if that's consistently repeated, or there's a really high stress period, that threshold is met and some.
Yeah.
You
I mean,
know.
with me, and obviously me and Betty are just like one person really, but I know if ever I'm stressed, it's always my gut that feels it.
I always want to sing a song, to become one. You know, the spice.
That literally is me and Betty.
Yeah.
And if really Betty starts throwing up, I mean, how much more linked can you be? Because I'm like, oh God, Betty's thrown up, I'm too stressed, I need to, you know.
I need to chill out.
Yeah. And in one sense, it's it's not good, but it is, because it really makes me try and get a handle on my stress, because I'm like, God, I don't want to make the dog bad. I don't care if I'm stressed, but I don't want to make my dog bad. So I'm like that. Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like when you came to me with Betty, and I went, you know what, I think we'll do some stuff with you first. And I think actually someone had just said, look, Karla, let's look at you and what's going on for you, and let's sort stuff out. I think actually maybe you would have gone, no, you're all right. But the fact that it was for the dog.
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
yeah,
I'll do whatever it takes.
You know, I look back to that time and I was totally neurotic, you know, but
you weren't that.
In that cycle yourself, and the dog's poorly and you're stressed, and sometimes you can't see just how neurotic you are until someone else goes, actually you're a bit neurotic, and then you go, oh yeah, you're right.
you weren't too, I mean, yes, it was really linked in and we needed to sort that out, but I mean, I don't think there isn't anybody who comes to me or Katie with unwell dogs or cats that aren't already in that state. It's a very heightened, very can be quite an emotional relationship, and sometimes people can really not like you because they're not getting the results that they want. But then, you know, there's no deeper love than when you've got them to that point then, and then, you know, they're loving you then. You get like chocolates and flowers and things. It's like, God, oh.
I've been on that road for such a long time with Betty. I wasn't expecting any miracle cure, and I certainly wasn't expecting it in a month or 2 months or 3 months. I knew that it was going to be a very, very long road. So the thing that
I remember you saying, I don't really know what you're going to do because I've seen so many people. I was like, okay.
One's going to be a good one.
Challenge accepted.
Yeah, well, great now, thank goodness. But yes, back to the ears. So with stress, we've done food a little bit, haven't we? So we would always recommend an elimination diet if we suspect food. Yeah,
I definitely an elimination. Or what quite often, what I've been doing recently is quite a few people that come to me maybe already in that kind of nutrition journey where they're already feeding raw, or they tried raw, or they quite like to now do cooked, but they don't know how to do it, you know. And I find sometimes to go on to maybe a novel protein, but create a nice recipe from that, because then you've got more of a balanced approach. And I'm not buying into the whole, you know, it's got to be completely balanced, but you know, you have, because you're going to be doing that for at least 12 weeks, it can be helpful. So if you can find, or we can find a protein that's better suited, then that most definitely does help. Yeah, but then you've got that really laborious process of trialing even the supplements, to trialing each ingredient as you go along. I mean, you know, I think some people go, really? We're like the best of friends by the end of it, you know. Yeah,
it takes an eternity, and I've done it, and you know, when people are in group, they're like, oh, I can't believe I've done that. I'm like, I've done it a million times. So you know, you think, oh, they're doing all right, so you'll give them something else. Yeah. And then the dog's ill, and then you're like, oh, was it the whatever, or was it that? And do you know, I still do it now occasionally, and then go, how stupid are you? are you actually that stupid? And you're like, yeah, you are. Because you get complacent, you're like, oh, they're doing great. I'll give her this treat, even though I know she's on predominantly beef. I'll give her that treat. Oh, and then I'll give her this the next day. And then, of course, she has a poorly tummy. And I'm like, well, what was it? It's human nature, isn't it?
It is, you do, there is a complacency. And equally, I think, I'm just losing Nana Mary's slipper here. I think as well, we're going on about like really bad cases. There are some people that, yes, their dog's getting recurrent ear issues, but actually some of those can be really easily resolved as well.
Yeah.
You know, I think it's just really dependent on
I think even with, you know, it doesn't even have to be like the full diet or something. They might be given some cereal-based treats.
Yeah.
It can literally be as simple as stop those treats and they're like, the dog's ears never been bad again. So it can literally be the tiniest thing, or it can end up being a massive journey, and you just don't know which one it's going to be.
Yeah. I've created a really nice diet plan for a lady. It wasn't that long ago, and she's just like, I just don't get it. We're not getting anywhere with this. And I was like, so we've stripped everything out, everything. No treats, no this, no that. And then that's when you get down to the nitty-gritty. Oh, well, I do, because he really loves the goat milk in the morning. I'm like, oh, no, you're naughty. You can't. But not because we can't at some point maybe try and give goat milk again, or that goat milk's bad for any other dog. But in this instance, no.
It's like, yeah, but you just get a toast, just mouthful, only a tiny bit, and you're like, no, you can't give the dog toast. And especially
so hard though, isn't it? It's so hard. I'm the worst. Actually, my aunt's got into this terrible process of having a packet of crisps every day, and she shares it with the dog.
Oh God.
But it's just this time where, and you see her little brown eyes looking up, and she's got this pretty little wild face, like, where is it? I want it. It's just really cute.
I know, it's so hard. I remember filling a questionnaire in for a friend. I think I was filling it in for you, and I was like, okay, so treats. What treats do they have? Duck ones. Then the husband was like, no, duck ones. Well, she does. Occasionally, she does have a few duck. And I'm like, look, does she have duck or does she not have duck? Somebody just give me an answer, because I'm going to lose my mind in a minute.
That was Chris. Yeah.
Oh gosh, so funny, but so lovely. Yeah, so look at every little tiny minute detail, everything, absolutely everything. And if you're doing an elimination diet, you have to cut out everything. And that's hard. It's really hard, and I think really difficult if people have got kids as well, because the kids are dropping. So they'll have been really good on this elimination diet for maybe 2 or 3 weeks, not as things pass them out, and then the kid will drop half a slice of pizza, and you're like, well.
Oh, it's so gutting when you're working with someone and the dog's got IBD, or, you know, it's even PLE or something, you know, really, really chronic, that you've really struggled and worked hard to get them to a certain point. And then they'll contact you and go, oh, he ended up in the vets this weekend, he's on a drip, and this, that, and the other. And you think, what happened? And your automatic reaction is, what did we do? What could have triggered? And it's always, no, he snuffled some bread from outside, or picked something up from what the kids dropped, or I dropped a bit of pasta on the floor. I mean, you literally have to be so diligent, don't you?
I find, you know, with client of mine, you know, they're so good, and then take them around to the grannies, and the granny just feeds the dog all sorts, and I'm like, I'll go mad. I mean, with my nana, I mean, they were like best friends, and she was 98, and she would never ever give Betty a single thing that she wasn't allowed. She was so diligent, my nana, really, really diligent. I doesn't mind. She probably knew that her life wouldn't be worth living if she gave her anything she wasn't allowed. No,
and that dog was as much her baby as yours, wasn't it?
I think she was more her baby than mine.
Yeah.
My nose pushed.
I was going to say, I think she babied the dog more than she babied you. I know that much. She's like, oh, don't say that about Betty.
Oh, I wasn't allowed to tell her off or anything.
Oh.
Don't talk. We talk, and I'm like, oh God, all right. It was fine. I was happy to get pushed out for Betty.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, look, I think we've covered almost 40 minutes. I think we can end here. Now, the really annoying thing, because we're streaming this through Zoom on Facebook, is we haven't got any questions coming up. So apologies to anybody if they have put questions. We can't see them. And maybe Beth might, but poor Beth is mute behind the screen. Not that you couldn't join in if you did want to, Beth. So what we can do is we can jump on, and if you've got any questions, put them down and we'll answer them. And I think what might be quite helpful is on last Thursday, I did a little chat on an elimination diet. I'm going to start writing it more and doing more guides and stuff like that, just so it's a little bit more helpful just in terms of how people might approach something.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was good that, so I think for ears, just as a very basic outline, obviously you really need to know more about the dog, but you would look at what the dog's eating, removing any toxins from the dog's life, working on the gut, obviously any stress in its life.
Toxins, do we say toxins?
So look at what vaccines you're given, what chemical-free worm treatments, what food and treats you're given, look at the and stress. They're really the 5 things that you would look at. And of course, environmental allergies, if it's reoccurring all the time, you probably need to establish what's going on with that as well. Yeah.
You can, I find you can actually do a lot with environmental. If it's not insanely bad, you can do a lot with environmental when you're working with the diet and so on. You really can.
Yeah. Okie dokie. Thanks very much.
Thanks for joining. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.